There was no moment when it happened, no signal, no announcement, no final decision. Humanity did not stop because it failed. It stopped because there was nothing left that needed to be improved, and so the world continued. Not forward, not backward, only inward. Stones remained where they had always been. Fire was lit, not brighter than yesterday, not dimmer. Hands repeated movements learned long ago, without asking why. In this world, nothing rushes to become more. Nothing waits to be remembered, and no one expects tomorrow to arrive differently than today. Stay here for a while. This story does not begin. It simply continues. Mist rests low among the stones, as it does most mornings, thinning and thickening with no hurry, drifting between the broken arches and the long fallen walls where moss has learned the shapes of old carvings and softened them. The ground is cool and uneven, worn smooth where feet have passed for longer than anyone remembers, the paths curving gently around roots that rise from the soil like slow waves, roots that belong to trees older than the stories that are no longer told. At the center of the land stands the tall stone monument, its surface split by a narrow crack that begins near the top and wanders downward without ever quite reaching the base. Lichen fills the crevice in pale greens and silvers, and small plants have made homes along its edges, drinking rain that settles there. The monument does not lean. It stands because it has always stood, because the stones beneath it remain where they were placed, because no one has ever needed it to do anything else. Around it, the ruins spread outward, not in neat lines, but in the softened arrangement that time prefers. Columns lie half-buried, becoming steps for children who climb them slowly and carefully, not as a game, but as a way of moving from one place to another. Roofless holes are open to the sky where branches stretch across empty spaces and leaves catch the light of early dawn, filtering it into gentle patterns that move across stone floors. The people wake with the light, or a little before it, or sometimes after. There is no signal to begin the day. Fires from the night before glow faintly beneath layers of ash, and someone will stir them back to life with practiced hands, feeding them small pieces of wood gathered the day before. The flames rise quietly, as they always do, warming the air just enough to take the edge from the morning cool. Nearby, others move without speaking, stepping round sleeping forms wrapped in woven cloth, adjusting a covering here, adding another piece of wood there. These motions are not deliberate in the way of planning, but familiar, carried by bodies that know what to do without needing to think about it. The fires are not built larger than they need to be. The warmth is enough. Food is prepared slowly. Roots pulled from the earth days ago are cleaned and cut. Grains gathered from the fields beyond the ruins are ground between stones whose surfaces fit together from long use. Water is carried from the stream that curves past the outer walls, its banks thick with grass and small flowering plants that open and close with the light. The water tastes faintly of stone and soil, as it always has. No one eats alone unless they happen to be apart. No one gathers everyone together unless they are already close. Meals happen where people are, sitting on low walls or fallen blocks, leaning against tree trunks that have grown through ceilings and now hold up nothing but birds and the slow sway of leaves. The sounds are soft, the crackle of fire, the distant call of an animal moving through the mist, the muted voices of people speaking only when words are needed. Children move among the adults, sometimes helping, sometimes watching, sometimes wandering away toward the monument, or the deeper ruins where the light is dimmer and the air smells of damp stone. They learn by doing, by seeing the same actions repeated, by placing their hands where other hands have been placed before. No one explains what will happen later. Later arrives on its own. The structures are tended without plans. When a wall loosens, stones are fitted back into place. When a roof sags, branches are added beneath it. Nothing is restored to what it once was, because what it once was is not present in anyone's mind. What matters is that it remains standing, that it shelters fire and sleep, that it does not fall unexpectedly. The repairs blend into the original work, new stones resting against old ones, all of them weathered in their own ways. The monument at the center is never repaired. It does not need to be. Sometimes people sit at its base, their backs against the cool stone, feeling the slow warmth of the day reach them as the sun rises higher. Sometimes they rest their hands against the surface, tracing the unevenness without searching for meaning. Birds nest in the shallow hollows near the top, and their shadows pass across the ground below. As the day moves on, the mist lifts and thins, revealing more of the land beyond the ruins. Fields extend outward, irregular and quiet, bordered by trees that have grown where old roads once ran. The paths between the fields curve gently, following the land rather than cutting through it. People walk these paths carrying tools made of wood and stone, worn smooth by use, neither new nor old. Work is done without urgency. Plants are tended because they grow there. Animals are watched because they move through the same spaces. Nothing is measured beyond what the eye and the hand can judge. When the sun reaches its highest point, some people rest in the shade, leaning against walls that hold the coolness of the night inside them. Others continue moving slowly, unbothered by time. There are moments when the wind shifts and carries the scent of rain from far away. Clouds gather and separate without drawing attention. When rain falls, it darkens the stone and deepens the colors of moss and leaf. Water runs along channels carved long ago, finding its way toward the stream. People adjust coverings, move fires inward, continue as before. Generations have passed like this, their traces visible only in the subtle changes of paths worn deeper, stones polished smoother, trees grown thicker around the ruins. The elders sit quietly, their movement slower but no less certain. They are listened to when they speak, not because they know more, but because their voices are familiar, carrying the same rhythms as the land. At night, firelight flickers against stone walls, throwing soft shadows that move with the flames. The monument is a darker shape against the sky, its cracked surface catching the light only at certain angles. The stars appear as they always do, scattered and steady. People settle into sleep where they are, the warmth of the fire at their backs, the sound of insects and distant water filling the spaces between breaths. Dreams come and go without being shared. Morning returns without announcement. The cycle continues, not as a pattern to be followed, but as the way things are. Someone wakes early and walks to the stream, watching the reflection of the monument ripple and reform on the surface of the water. Someone else adjusts a stone in a wall that shifted during the night. A child sits on a fallen column, running fingers through the grass growing around it. The ruins remain, neither decaying nor restored, held in balance by attention without intention. Trees continue to grow through open spaces, their roots wrapping around stone, their branches arching overhead. Birds return to the same nesting places. Fires are lit and allowed to fade. Paths are walked and walked again. The light changes slowly from dawn to day to the softer hues of late afternoon. Shadows lengthen across the ground, touching the base of the monument, stretching across the worn stones. People move closer together as the air cools, drawn by warmth and proximity rather than need. There is no sense of waiting for anything else. The land holds what it holds. The people live within it, small and steady, their presence woven into the stone and wooden soil. The monument stands, cracked and covered in moss, watching nothing, anchoring the space simply by being there. As the mist begins to gather again among the ruins, drifting between the trunks of the great trees that have claimed the open halls, their leaves whispering softly when the air moves. Firelight glows in small pockets among the stones, each flame contained, steady, reflecting in shallow bowls of water set nearby. The warmth does not reach far, but it does not need to. Those who sit closest feel it on their hands and faces, while others rest just beyond, wrapped in cloth, content with the coolness against their skin. Someone rises and moves a piece of wood so it burns more evenly. Someone else shifts where they are lying, finding a smoother place against the ground. The sounds are gentle and continuous, never breaking into silence, never growing loud enough to demand attention. An animal passes along the outer edge of the ruins, its steps soft on the damp earth, unnoticed by those already drifting toward sleep. Above, the sky remains open where roofs once stood. Clouds slide slowly across the stars, changing their shapes, revealing and hiding them without pattern. The monument stands in partial shadow now, its upper stones pale against the darker sky, its base surrounded by quiet forms resting where they always rest. Moss along its crack glistens faintly, holding moisture from the mist, releasing it slowly back into the air. Night deepens without ceremony. The fires sink lower, embers pulsing gently beneath ash. Breath slows. Dreams pass through minds without urgency, images blending with the steady sensations of warmth, stone, and distant water. Somewhere, a branch creaks under its own weight, settling more comfortably into the space it has grown into. When the light returns, it does so gradually, a thinning of darkness rather than an arrival. The mist lifts just enough to show the edges of things again, the curve of a wall, the rise of a root, the outline of the monument standing unchanged. Dew clings to leaves and stone, cool against the fingers of the first person awake, who touches the ground as they stand, feeling its familiar firmness. Morning tasks resume where they left off, not as a beginning, but as a continuation. Fires are stirred, water is carried, food is prepared with the same unhurried motions. The fields beyond the ruins shimmer faintly as the sun reaches them, and people walk out along the winding paths, their steps aligning naturally with the rhythm of the land. In the shade of a large tree growing through what was once a wide chamber, a small group sits together, repairing a woven mat that has thinned in places. The fibers are replaced slowly, hands moving back and forth in a motion learned long ago. Nearby, a child traces patterns in the dust with a stick, the lines fading almost as soon as they are made. The stream continues its course, carrying reflections of stone and sky, leaves drifting along its surface until they catch on a bend and rest there. Along its banks, smooth stones show where people have stood countless times before, their shapes fitting the soles of feet without thought. The water level rises and falls with the seasons, never enough to surprise. As the day settles into its familiar arc, the monument remains at the center, gathering light, shadow, rain, and moss, offering nothing and requiring nothing. People pass it on their way from one place to another, sometimes pausing, sometimes not, their lives moving around it like water around a stone, continuous and unforced. As the air warms, then cools again, and the slow, quiet rhythm carries on. Later, when the sun has climbed just high enough to soften the chill left by the night, the ruins hold a gentle balance of light and shadow. Brightness settles on open stone, while doorways and covered passages remain cool and dim, inviting slow movement rather than pause. Someone walks along the inner path that circles the monument, fingers brushing the wall as they pass, feeling the grain of the stone, the places where rain has carved shallow channels over many seasons. In one of the roofless chambers, a pair of people kneel beside a low hearth built against an old foundation. The stones there are darkened from countless fires, each one lit, tended, and allowed to fade without ceremony. They place a pot near the coals, not watching closely, knowing the warmth will reach it in time. Nearby, bundles of dried plants hang from a beam that no longer supports anything else, swaying slightly when the air moves. Beyond the ruins, the fields remain quiet, their edges softened by grasses and wild flowers that grow wherever space allows. Someone moves among them slowly, checking plants by touch rather than sight, brushing leaves aside, feeling the firmness of stems. Birds rise and settle again, unbothered by the presence below them. The work continues until it no longer does, until hands grow tired and bodies turn naturally back toward shade and stone. At the stream, water slips over rocks smoothed into gentle curves. A child crouches there, watching light break into fragments on the moving surface, reaching in to let the coolness wrap around their fingers. An older figure sits nearby on a flat stone, feet in the shallows, gaze unfocused, following nothing in particular as the current carries small bits of leaf and bark past. The monument gathers the afternoon light along one side, its cracked face brightened just enough to show the varied colors of lichen and moss clinging to it. Insects move in and out of the warmth, tracing small paths through the air. Someone rests against the base, eyes closed, breathing slow and even, listening to the layered sounds of the place. Wind through leaves, distant voices, water moving steadily onward. As the sun lowers, the air cools again, bringing with it the faint scent of damp stone and growing things. People drift back toward the center without deciding to do so, settling into familiar spaces. Fires are lit once more, their glow returning to the same stones, the same walls, illuminating textures known by heart. Light fades into softer tones, and the ruins seem to draw closer together, shadows blending edges until stone and tree and earth feel part of a single shape. Someone adds another piece of wood to a fire. Someone else adjusts where they sit. The monument stands quietly among them unchanged, holding the slow passage of days without marking them as mist begins to rise again from the ground, and the steady presence of the place continues without pause. The mist moves in gentle layers now, drifting closer to the ground as the evening cool settles, softening the outlines of stone and root until everything seems nearer, closer together, as though the space itself has grown smaller and more intimate. Firelight flickers low and steady, reflecting off smooth surfaces worn by countless hands and passing bodies, each reflection lingering for a moment before shifting and fading. Voices rise briefly and fall again, not carrying far, shaped more by breath than by intention. Someone hums a simple pattern without beginning or end, the sound blending with the quiet crackle of burning wood and the distant flow of water beyond the ruins. The hum fades naturally as sleep approaches, replaced by the deeper rhythm of breathing and the slow settling of the night. Above, leaves stir where the larger trees stretch across open holes, their branches weaving gently through spaces once framed by stone. The air holds the scent of ash and damp earth, familiar and grounding. Small animals move along the edges of the ruins, pausing, listening, continuing on without fear or haste. As darkness deepens, the monument becomes a presence more felt than seen, its mass interrupting the faint glow of stars, its surface cool and unmoving. Moisture gathers along its crack again, beads forming and slipping downward, feeding the moss that clings there patiently. Nothing disturbs it, nothing needs to. Sleep spreads unevenly, some drifting quickly, others remaining awake a little longer, watching embers pulse and dim. A hand reaches out to pull a covering closer. Another rests against stone, fingers relaxed, no longer tracing its surface. The fires burn lower, contained by stones set carefully in place long ago, their heat easing slowly into the surrounding ground. When night gives way to the first hint of light, it does so quietly, a gradual softening of darkness rather than a change. Shapes emerge without sharpness. The mist thins just enough to reveal familiar paths and resting places. Someone wakes and sits up, listening, sensing the return of the day without marking it. Movement resumes gently, ashes brushed aside. Coals are coaxed back into flame. Water is fetched again from the stream, its surface pale under the early sky. The monument stands as it always does, catching the faint light along one edge, releasing the night without resistance. In the fields, dew clings to leaves and grasses, bending them slightly until warmth lifts it away. Feet follow the same winding routes, stepping where the ground feels right. Hands return to familiar tasks, repeating motions shaped by long habit, neither hurried nor delayed. The ruins hold their quiet order, walls and arches framing nothing in particular, offering shelter without enclosure. Trees continue their slow growth through stone, their roots deepening, their branches widening, sharing space without contest. Birds settle into their places again, the air filling briefly with soft calls before returning to calm. Time passes without shape, marked only by shifting light and the gentle alternation of warmth and cool. People move, rest and move again, their presence light and continuous, woven into the land rather than set against it. The monument remains at the center, unchanged and unremarked. As the mist drifts, the fires glow, and the slow, steady life of the place carries on, breathing evenly, without pause, without expectation. The day eases forward, neither quickening nor slowing, the light sliding across the stone in a way that feels familiar without being noticed. In the deeper recesses of the ruins, cool air lingers, holding the scent of damp earth and old leaves. Someone passes through one of these shaded corridors, footsteps muted by soil that has gathered over time, the ceiling open above where vines have claimed the edges and hang downward in loose, patient curves. Near the monument, a small patch of sunlight warms the ground, and a few people sit there quietly, not gathered for any reason, simply present. One smooths a piece of wood with a stone, removing roughness little by little, not shaping it into anything new, only making it more comfortable to hold. Another leans back against the monument's base, eyes half closed, feeling the slow transfer of warmth from stone to skin. The air shifts gently, carrying distant sounds from beyond the ruins, the faint movement of animals through grass, the soft rustle of leaves stirred by a passing breeze. These sounds arrive and fade without drawing attention, becoming part of the constant background that holds everything together. Nothing interrupts, nothing presses forward. At the stream, water continues its steady motion, curling around stones that have not moved in anyone's lifetime. Someone rinses their hands there, watching ripples spread and dissolve. The surface reflects fragments of sky and branches overhead, the images breaking and reforming endlessly, never settling into one shape for long. Back among the ruins, cloth is laid out to dry on sun-worn stone, its fibers loosening as the heat reaches them. Nearby, a child lies on their back, looking up through the branches where leaves overlap, light filtering through in soft, shifting patterns. The child does not count the leaves or follow their movement with intention. The looking itself is enough. As the sun drifts lower, shadows lengthen again, stretching across paths and pooling at the bases of walls. The monument's crack deepens in contrast, dark against the lighter stone, a line that draws moisture and moss and nothing else. Someone passes a hand along it in passing, not lingering, not wondering. The fires are tended once more as the air cools, their glow returning gently to the center of the space. People drift inward from the fields and outer paths, settling where they always do, bodies finding familiar positions without thought. Food is shared quietly, eaten slowly, the warmth of it spreading through the body as evening settles. Mist begins to rise again, thin at first, curling along the ground and into low spaces between stones. Firelight diffuses through it, softening edges, blending forms until the ruins feel less like structures and more like part of the land itself. The monument stands within this haze, its outlines steady even as its details fade. Night deepens without ceremony. Stars appear where the sky opens above fallen walls, their light distant and calm. Breathing slows, fires sink to embers. The land holds its shape in darkness, unchanged, waiting for nothing. And when the first pale hint of morning returns once more, it does so as it always has, touching stone and leaf and water with equal gentleness, and the quiet rhythm of the place continues, unbroken, carrying life forward in the same slow, steady way, without beginning, without end, without ever needing to become something else. The pale light settles a little more firmly across the ruins, not bright, not dim, resting there as though it has found its place. Dew loosens its hold on stone and leaf, sliding away in small, unremarked movements that darken the ground for a moment before fading. The air holds a gentle coolness, carrying the scent of wet earth and old stone, a scent that never fully leaves. Someone walks the outer path where grasses brush against their legs, bending and springing back upright after each step. The path curves around the ruins rather than through them, following the land's quiet preference. From here, the monument is seen between trees and broken walls, rising just enough above everything else to be noticed without demanding attention, its cracked surface catching light in uneven patches. Within the ruins, the day unfolds in familiar fragments. A fire is rebuilt where it always is, stones nudged closer together, ash moved aside with a piece of wood smoothed by years of use. The flame catches slowly, patient, settling into a steady burn. Nearby, water is poured into a vessel that bears small chips along its rim, each one earned through time rather than damage. In the shade of a wide arch, long fallen but still marking space, a few people sit and work with their hands, mending what has worn thin. Fibers are drawn together, knots tightened just enough to hold. The rhythm of the work is unhurried, pauses stretching comfortably between movements. No one watches the sun. No one counts the passing hours. Children wander in and out of sight, their movements light, their attention drifting from stone to insect to sound carried on the air. One pauses near the base of the monument, resting a palm against its surface, feeling the coolness there even as the day warms. Another traces a finger through moss growing between stones, leaving a brief line that fills in again when the finger lifts away. The stream continues its quiet conversation with the land, water slipping past familiar bends, smoothing what is already smooth. Someone stands there for a time, listening, not waiting for anything, simply letting the sound settle into them. When they turn away, the water carries on unchanged. As the light shifts, clouds pass slowly overhead, dimming the ground for a while before moving on. The ruins accept the shadow without difference. Trees sway gently, leaves whispering softly where they meet, the sound drifting through open chambers and along corridors softened by time. Later, warmth gathers again on stone surfaces, and people drift toward it, sitting or lying where the heat feels right. The monument gathers this warmth too, releasing it slowly, its presence steady and unassuming. Insects move lazily through the air, their paths small and wandering, catching the light and losing it again. Toward evening, the colors soften, greens deepening, stone taking on warmer tones. Fires are prepared once more, not yet lit, only arranged, ready when the air cools further. Someone carries a bundle of wood and sets it down near the central space, each piece placed without thought. Mist begins to rise again as the day loosens its hold, curling through low places, drifting along the ground, finding familiar hollows. Firelight appears, one flame, then another, glowing gently through the haze. People gather nearer without gathering, settling into places shaped by long habit. The monument stands within the softening air, its outline steady even as its surface fades into shadow. The crack along its face holds moisture again, feeding the quiet growth there. Breathing slows, movements become fewer, the night settles without weight, and the slow, unbroken presence of stone, tree, water, and fire continues, carrying the same gentle rhythm forward, moment by moment, without pause. The night air grows a little cooler, settling gently around the bodies resting among the stones. Firelight breathes in and out as embers shift, casting soft, wavering patterns along the ground and up the sides of walls that no longer divide anything. The patterns move slowly, never repeating in the same way, never asking to be noticed. Someone turns in their sleep, the fabric beneath them whispering against stone. Another draws closer to the warmth without waking, guided by habit older than memory. The fires remain small, contained, their heat shared easily among those nearby, leaving the edges of the ruins in comfortable shadow. Above, the trees that have grown through the open ceilings sway slightly, their leaves brushing one another with a sound like distant water. A few fall and drift downward, settling quietly on the ground, joining others already there. No one clears them away. They soften the paths, deepen the earth, become part of what is walked upon. The monument stands quietly in the half-light, its presence felt even when it is not seen. The stone holds the day's warmth deep within it, releasing it slowly into the surrounding air. Moisture beads along its cracked surface and slides down to the base, darkening the ground where it lands. Moss thickens there, patient and unhurried. In the deepest hours of night, the world feels especially still, though it is never truly silent. The stream continues to move beyond the ruins, unseen but heard, its steady sound threading through sleep. Small creatures pass through the outer spaces, their movements brief and careful, leaving no trace that lasts. When the darkness begins to thin again, it does so gently, light seeping back into the world rather than arriving. Shapes return without edges. Stone and tree and earth separate themselves slowly from one another, each becoming visible in its own time. The mist lifts just enough to reveal familiar forms, then settles again, as though deciding there is no need to hurry. Someone wakes and sits up, listening. The air feels the same, the ground feels the same, the monument stands where it always has. There is comfort in this sameness, though no one names it as such. The day resumes without beginning. Ash is stirred. Coals glow faintly and are coaxed back into flame. Water is fetched from the stream, cool against the skin, catching the early light in small, shifting reflections. Hands move with ease, following motions shaped by repetition rather than instruction. In the fields beyond the ruins, plants bend under the weight of dew, then slowly lift as warmth returns. People walk among them, their paths curving naturally, feet finding the places where the ground gives just enough. Birds rise and settle again, their calls brief, their presence light. Back among the stones, cloth is shaken out and laid across sun-warmed surfaces. Repairs continue where wear has appeared, fibers drawn together, stones nudged back into place. Nothing is made new. Nothing needs to be. The monument catches the growing light along one side, its surface revealing subtle variations in color and texture. Someone passes close, fingers grazing the stone without stopping. The touch leaves no mark, and the stone remains unchanged. As the day stretches onward, the ruins hold their quiet balance. Shade and sunlight trade places slowly. People rest, then move, then rest again. Fires are allowed to fade, then are built once more when the air cools. Mist rises and falls with the rhythm of warmth and night. There is no signal when one moment becomes the next. The land carries everything forward gently, stone and tree and water and human presence woven together without strain. The monument standing at the center of it all, steady and unremarked as the soft passage of time continues, unbroken, drifting onward just as it always has. The light moves again, slowly enough that it is felt only after it has already changed, a warmth settling into stone that had been cool, a shadow sliding away from a wall without drawing the eye. The ruins breathe with the day, holding and releasing air, holding and releasing heat, their shapes softened by growth and weather until they seem less like remnants and more like a natural arrangement of shelter and passage. Near one of the wider openings, where an old floor has cracked and given way to soil, small plants grow in a loose cluster, their leaves broad and calm. Someone kneels there, clearing away fallen debris with gentle motions, not to expand the space, only to keep it open enough for light to reach the leaves. The work ends when it feels finished, not when it reaches a certain point. The monument remains quiet at the center, its height unchanged, its surface carrying the marks of rain and sun. Birds land briefly along its upper edges, testing the stone before lifting away again. Feathers drift down and catch on moss or settle into the grass below, becoming part of the ground without ceremony. Further out, beyond the last standing walls, the land rolls gently, covered in grasses that move together when the wind passes through. Someone walks there alone for a time, not separate from the others, simply following a different rhythm for the moment. The path beneath their feet is barely visible, known more by feel than by sight. Back among the ruins, a fire burns low, enough to warm hands resting nearby. A vessel sits beside it, its contents thickening slowly, stirred now and then without focus. The scent rises and fades, blending with smoke and earth, becoming part of the place rather than standing apart from it. Children drift through the spaces, sometimes pausing to watch an insect cross a stone, sometimes lying flat on the ground to feel its coolness through their clothing. Their movements leave temporary impressions that disappear as soon as they move on. Nothing asks to be remembered. The stream continues its steady passage, its sound shifting slightly as water levels change with the day. Someone places stones along its edge where the bank has softened, pressing them into place with slow care. The stones hold, not because they must, but because they fit there. As afternoon eases toward evening, the air grows heavier, carrying moisture that gathers along leaves and stone. Clouds pass overhead, dimming the light without darkening it, allowing the land to rest in softer tones. The ruins accept the change without response. Fires are prepared again as the warmth fades, wood set within familiar rings of stone. The first flame appears and settles, not bright, not urgent. Others follow, their glow spreading gently, illuminating faces and hands and the surfaces around them. Shadows return to their places, long and calm. The monument stands within the growing haze, its outline steady even as details soften. The crack along its face darkens as moisture returns, feeding the growth that clings there patiently. Someone passes nearby, carrying water, their steps slow, their presence brief. Night arrives as a deepening rather than a change. The sky opens where walls have fallen, stars appearing between branches and drifting clouds. Breathing slows, movements quiet. The land holds everyone within its steady rhythm. Later, when sleep has settled unevenly across the ruins, the fires dim to embers, glowing softly beneath ash. The sound of water and wind continues, threading through the stillness. The monument remains, holding warmth and shadow, rain and moss, standing, as it always has, as the slow, continuous presence of this place carries on, moment by moment, without marking the passage, without needing to move toward anything else. The embers rest quietly, their faint glow pulsing now and then, as the air moves, a slow breathing shared between fire and night. Ash settles into its familiar patterns, light enough to shift with the slightest disturbance, heavy enough to remain where it falls. Around the fires, bodies lie at ease, limbs arranged by comfort rather than intention, cloth rising and falling with steady breaths. In the spaces where walls once met ceilings, the open sky drifts overhead, clouds sliding past the stars and softening their light. A breeze passes through the ruins, winding along corridors shaped long ago, carrying the scent of leaves and stone and distant water. It touches skin gently, cool but not sharp, then moves on. The monument holds its place in the darkness, unseen but present, its mass shaping the space around it. The stone releases the last of the day's warmth slowly, evenly, offering it back to the air without effort. Moisture gathers again along its surface, settling into the crack, darkening the moss there, feeding growth that has never needed encouragement. Farther out, beyond the edge of firelight, grasses sway faintly, bending under the night air and straightening again when it passes. Small creatures move through them, following paths known only by feel, leaving no trace that lasts beyond the moment. The land receives these movements without keeping account. As the night deepens, sound becomes simpler, layered but soft, the steady murmur of the stream, the whisper of leaves, the faint crackle of embers settling further into ash. These sounds drift through sleep, weaving themselves into dreams that pass and fade without being held. When the darkness begins to loosen, it does so almost imperceptibly. A subtle lightness touches the sky, not yet bright enough to define shapes, only enough to thin the shadows. Stone and tree and ground remain close together, their edges still blurred, as though the world has not quite decided to separate itself again. Someone stirs, adjusting where they rest, guided by comfort rather than wakefulness. Another breath deepens, then evens out again. The fires remain quiet, waiting without expectation. The monument stands unchanged, its silhouette slowly returning as the light grows. Mist rises from the ground, drawn upward by the faint warmth of the coming day. It gathers between stones, curls around roots, drifts across open spaces where floors have given way to soil. It softens everything it touches, holding the ruins in a gentle suspension. As light continues its gradual return, details emerge without emphasis: the curve of a fallen column, the texture of bark where a tree has grown through stone, the worn surface of a path shaped by countless steps. The world reveals itself as it always has, without surprise. Movement resumes slowly. Someone sits up, listening, sensing the familiar balance of air and sound. Ashes brushed aside. A coal glows faintly and is coaxed back into flame. Water is gathered again from the stream, its surface pale and calm beneath the early sky. In the fields, dew releases its hold as warmth spreads, droplets slipping from leaves to darken the earth briefly before vanishing. Feet follow the same winding routes, guided by the land's gentle contours. Hands return to the same work, repeating motions that require no thought. The monument catches the new light along one edge, its surface revealing subtle shades where stone meets moss. Someone passes close, their shadow sliding briefly across it, then moving on. The shadow fades, the stone remains. The day stretches quietly outward from this moment, unfolding without urgency. Shade and light trade places again. Fires will fade and be lit once more. Mist will rise and settle. The ruins will hold their shape, neither changing nor resisting change. And through it all, stone, tree, water, and human presence continue together, steady and unremarked, carried forward by the same calm rhythm, the same gentle persistence, as the place remains exactly what it is, moment after moment, without pause, without direction, simply continuing. The morning settles fully into itself, the light now spread evenly across the ruins, no longer tentative, no longer new. Stone that had held the night's cool releases it slowly, warming where the sun touches and remaining calm where shade lingers. The air carries a quiet balance, neither cool nor warm enough to draw attention, simply present. Near the stream, someone pauses to rinse a vessel, watching the water slide over its surface and carry away what it loosens. The movement is unhurried, repeated until it feels complete. Then the vessel is lifted and carried back along the familiar path. The stream continues without noticing, its sound steady, its course unchanged. In a sheltered corner where two walls lean toward one another, cloth is folded and set aside, kept from the damp ground. A hand smooths it once, then withdraws. Nearby, a small fire is allowed to fade, its work done for now. The stones around it remain warm, holding the memory of flame without needing it to continue. The monument stands quiet in the center, its presence steady and undemanding. Light reveals the fine lines in its surface, places where rain has traced the same paths again and again. Moss grows thicker where water gathers, softer where the stone dips inward. Insects rest briefly there, warming themselves before lifting away. Children move through the open spaces, their paths crossing and separating without plan. One carries a small bundle of gathered plants, another trails behind, hands brushing against walls and roots as they pass. Their voices rise softly, then fall. Words unimportant, sound enough. Further out, someone works at the edge of the fields, adjusting a low barrier of stones that marks where growth is welcome and where it is gently guided away. The stones fit together easily, each finding a place that feels right. When the line holds, the hands withdraw, leaving it to remain as it will. The trees continue their slow stretching, leaves turning toward light where they can, casting moving patterns on the ground below. Shadows drift across the ruins, never staying long in one place, softening edges, then releasing them again. The land accepts this movement as it accepts everything else. As the day leans toward its quieter half, people drift back toward shade and stone, settling where the air feels stillest. Someone lies back against a warm wall, eyes closed, listening to the layered sounds that never fully disappear. Another sits nearby, working with a small object, smoothing it further, though it is already smooth enough. The monument gathers the afternoon warmth and holds it, its shadow stretching slowly across the ground as the light shifts. No one marks the change. It happens whether noticed or not. The crack along its face darkens slightly as moisture gathers again, preparing for the evening's cool. When the air begins to soften toward dusk, fires are prepared without hurry. Wood is stacked where it always is, stones adjusted slightly to guide the flame. The first spark catches, then settles, the fire finding its size naturally. Others follow, their glow spreading gently through the ruins. Mist begins to rise once more, thin at first, curling around ankles and stones, drifting into low spaces and open halls. Firelight diffuses through it, blurring edges, blending forms until the ruins feel less defined, more like a shared shelter shaped by time rather than hands. The monument remains steady within the haze, its outline familiar even as details fade. Someone passes close, carrying water, their steps slow and even. Another pauses briefly at the base, resting a hand against the stone, then moving on without thought. Night deepens gradually, the sky opening where walls have fallen, stars appearing between branches and drifting cloud. Breathing slows. Movements become fewer. Fires settle into embers again, their warmth lingering low and steady. The land holds everything within its quiet rhythm. Water continues to move. Leaves whisper softly. Stone remains where it is. Human presence rests lightly among it all, woven into the same steady pattern. And as the hours pass without being counted, the place continues exactly as it is, moment flowing into moment, mist rising and thinning, light fading and returning, the monument standing at the center, unchanged, unremarked, as the slow, endless life of this world carries on without pause. The embers breathe again as a piece of wood settles inward, sending a brief warmth outward before returning to a low, even glow. The air carries that warmth gently, touching stone and cloth and skin without lingering. Somewhere within the ruins, a sleeper turns, guided only by comfort, the movement small and soon stilled. Above, the sky drifts slowly, clouds thinning and thickening as they pass. Starlight reaches the ground in scattered fragments, finding open spaces between branches and broken walls. Where it touches stone, it fades quickly, absorbed into surfaces worn smooth by time. The monument remains steady in the darkness, its height felt more than seen. The stone holds moisture gathered through the night, releasing it gradually into the surrounding air. Moss along the crack deepens in color, dark and quiet, clinging without effort. Nothing disturbs it, nothing needs to. At the outer edges of the ruins, Grasses move softly as night air passes through them. The movement is gentle, uncoordinated, each blade responding in its own way. Small shapes pass through and are gone again, leaving the grasses to settle back into stillness. The sound of water continues, constant and calm, threading through the night. It moves around familiar stones, following paths shaped long ago, its rhythm unchanged by darkness or light. Those who sleep hear it without listening, the sound woven into rest. When the darkness begins to thin once more, it does so without direction, a lightning that spreads evenly rather than arriving from any one place. Shapes begin to return, slow and indistinct at first. The monument's outline emerges again, tall and quiet, its presence unchanged. Mist lifts from the ground in pale layers, drifting through low spaces, wrapping roots and stones before loosening its hold. It rises and thins, revealing familiar paths, familiar resting places. The world reveals itself gradually, as though there is no need to hurry. Someone wakes and sits, hands resting on the ground, feeling its cool steadiness. Nearby, another breath deepens, then eases. Ashes stirred gently, a coal responding with a faint glow. The fire returns without urgency, settling into a calm flame. Water is carried from the stream again, its surface pale under the early light. The vessel moves smoothly, guided by hands that know its weight. Droplets fall and darken the ground briefly before disappearing. In the fields, dew loosens from leaves as warmth spreads, the air filling with a soft shimmer that fades as quickly as it appears. Feet follow the same winding routes, pressing the ground just enough to leave a trace that will soon smooth away. Back among the ruins, stone warms where the light touches, remains cool where shade lingers. Cloth is spread, tools are lifted, small repairs begin where wear has appeared. The motions are slow, unmarked, ending when they feel complete. The monument catches the new light along its surface, revealing subtle variations where stone meets moss, where rain has traced the same paths over many seasons. Someone passes close, their shadow moving briefly across it, then slipping away. The day continues outward from this moment, unfolding quietly. Shade and light exchange places, fires will fade and be lit again, mist will rise and settle, water will continue its steady movement. Stone remains where it is, trees grow a little more. Human presence moves lightly among it all, resting, working, resting again, woven into the same calm pattern. And so the place carries on, moment flowing into moment, without signal, without destination, the monument standing at the center as it always has, holding nothing, marking nothing, as the slow, gentle life of this world continues without interruption. The warmth of the day settles in slowly, spreading across stone and soil in a way that feels earned rather than given. Shadows retreat without urgency, leaving behind patches of light that rest where they fall. The ruins respond quietly, holding the warmth in their thicker walls, letting it pass easily through open spaces where ceilings no longer exist. Near a cluster of fallen stones, someone sits and sharpens the edge of a tool against a smooth rock. The motion is slow and even, producing no sound beyond a soft scraping that blends into the larger stillness. When the edge feels right beneath the fingers, the work stops. The tool is set aside, ready without being tested. A little distance away, food is laid out on flat stone warmed by the sun. People sit nearby, not gathering so much as arriving in the same place at the same time. Eating is unhurried, each movement following the last with no need to speak. The warmth of the stone rises gently through cloth and skin, grounding the body in the moment. The monument watches this quiet movement without attention. Light reaches higher along its face now, revealing fine textures and shallow indentations that collect dust and pollen. Insects move across its surface, tracing small paths that last only seconds. Above, a bird settles briefly near the top, then lifts away again, leaving the stone unchanged. Beyond the inner ruins, the land opens into low, uneven ground where grasses and scattered trees grow freely. Someone walks there, carrying nothing, following a line where the earth dips slightly, then rises again. The path is known not by sight, but by how the feet remember it. At the stream, water continues to slide past its banks, reflecting fragments of sky and leaf. Someone steps into the shallows, feeling the current press gently around their ankles. They stand there for a time, unmoving, until the coolness becomes part of the body rather than something felt. When they step away, the water closes the space behind them. As the day leans toward its quieter stretch, sounds soften further. Wind moves through leaves with less insistence. Voices, when they appear, are brief and low, dissolving into the air as soon as they are formed. Nothing lingers longer than it needs to. The ruins hold this calm easily. Walls that once framed rooms now simply shape shade. Arches that once guided passage now frame sky and drifting cloud. Trees continue their slow growth through stone, roots thickening, branches widening, their presence accepted without question. Later, the light begins to warm less, settling into deeper tones. Stone releases heat slowly, the warmth rising just enough to be felt when one leans against it. People drift back toward the center again, drawn by habit and comfort rather than intention. Fires are prepared once more, wood arranged within familiar circles of stone. The flame catches and steadies, its glow spreading softly across the ground. Faces and hands are illuminated briefly, then fall back into shadow as people shift and settle. Mist begins to lift from the earth as the air cools, thin at first, then gathering, softening the edges of everything it touches. Firelight moves through it gently, blurring the ruins until stone and tree and ground feel like parts of the same quiet form. The monument stands within this softened space, its outlines steady, its surface disappearing into shadow. Moisture gathers again along its crack, feeding the moss there patiently. Someone passes nearby, steps slow, breath even, leaving no trace behind. Night deepens without pause. Stars appear where the sky opens above broken walls. Fires settle into embers, their warmth lingering low and constant. Breathing slows. Movements grow fewer. The stream continues to move. Leaves whisper faintly. Stone remains where it is. Human presence rests lightly among it all, part of the same rhythm, neither leading nor following. And the place continues, moment easing into moment, mist rising and thinning, light fading and returning, the monument standing at the center, unchanged and unremarked, as the calm, endless life of this world carries on without ever needing to arrive anywhere else. The embers sink a little deeper into ash, their glow muted but steady, a low warmth that spreads just far enough to be shared. Someone nearby adjusts a piece of cloth, drawing it closer, the motion small and almost absent-minded. The night air rests gently on the skin, cool without sharpness, familiar and easy. Beyond the reach of firelight, the ruins dissolve into softer shapes. Walls become suggestions, paths blend into ground. The monument remains a darker presence against the sky, its height felt more than seen, its mass shaping the space around it without effort. Moisture settles on its stone again, collecting patiently, feeding what grows there. A breeze moves through, slow and unforced, stirring leaves caught in branches overhead. They brush together with a faint sound, then fall quiet once more. Somewhere, an animal shifts its position, pauses and settles again, leaving the night unchanged. Sleep moves unevenly through the resting bodies, light for some, deeper for others. Breathing aligns and misaligns, a quiet layering of rhythms that never fully synchronize. Dreams pass through and fade, leaving no marks behind. As the hours stretch, darkness thins without direction. The sky lightens slightly, not enough to name, only enough to soften the contrast between stone and shadow. Mist gathers low, drawn upward from the cooling ground, drifting into open spaces and along corridors where floors have given way to soil. The monument's outline returns first, tall and steady, then the shapes of trees and walls follow, each emerging slowly, as if remembered rather than revealed. The mist lingers, curling around roots and fallen stone, holding the world in a brief suspension. Someone wakes and sits quietly, hands resting on the ground, feeling its familiar firmness. Nearby, embers are stirred, a coal answering with a faint glow. The fire returns to itself, not bright, not urgent, settling into a calm flame. Water is gathered again from the stream, its surface pale and smooth beneath the early sky. The vessel moves steadily, guided by hands that know its weight and balance. Droplets fall and darken the path briefly before disappearing. In the fields, dew clings to leaves and grasses, bending them slightly until warmth loosens its hold. Feet move along winding routes, pressing the ground just enough to feel it respond. The land gives and holds without comment. Back among the ruins, stone warms where light reaches it, remains cool where shade lingers. Cloth is laid out. Tools are lifted. Small repairs continue where wear has appeared, motions beginning and ending without being marked. The monument catches the growing light along one side, revealing subtle shifts in color where stone meets moss, where rain has traced the same lines again and again. Someone passes close, their shadow sliding briefly across its surface, then slipping away. The day settles into its familiar rhythm. Shade and light exchange places slowly. Fires will fade and be lit again. Mist will rise and thin. Water will continue its steady movement. Trees grow a little more. Stone remains where it is. Human presence moves lightly among it all, resting, working, resting again, woven into the same calm pattern that has always been there. And so the place continues, moment flowing into moment without signal, without destination, the monument standing at the center as it always has, holding warmth and shadow, rain and moss, as the quiet, unbroken life of this world carries on, gently, steadily, without pause. The light settles into the day as though it has nowhere else to go, spreading evenly across the stone and soil, resting in the open spaces between walls and trees. Warmth gathers where it is allowed, lingering on broad surfaces, slipping away easily where shade holds its place. The ruins accept this exchange without change, holding both light and coolness in quiet balance. Near a low wall softened by time, someone sits and works with a bundle of fibers, twisting them together slowly, feeling for the moment when they begin to hold on their own. The hands pause now and then, not from effort, but from ease, letting the motion resume when it wishes. When the fibers are set aside, nothing marks the end of the work beyond the stillness that follows. The monument remains present at the center, its stone face carrying the gentle variations of weather and growth. Light reveals the faint unevenness along its surface, the places where lichen spreads wider, where rainwater lingers longer. A small insect rests there briefly, wings still, then lifts away without leaving anything behind. Further along the inner path, someone moves quietly, carrying a shallow container filled with gathered plants. The path curves gently, guided by roots and fallen stone, leading without directing. The container is set down near a fire that has been allowed to burn low, its warmth just enough to soften what is placed beside it. At the stream, water flows as it always does, neither faster nor slower, slipping around stones smoothed into familiar shapes. Someone steps near the edge, rinsing their hands, letting the current move across skin and carry the sensation away. When they step back, the water closes again, unbroken. The air shifts slightly as clouds drift overhead, dimming the ground without darkening it. The change passes gently, like a breath taken and released. Leaves respond with a faint movement, then settle again, their positions altered just enough to feel different when touched later. Children wander through the open spaces, sometimes together, sometimes apart, pausing where something catches their attention, moving on when it no longer does. One crouches near a cluster of stones, watching an ant trace its careful path. Another lies stretched out on warm ground, eyes half closed, feeling the rise and fall of breath. As the day eases onward, people drift toward shade and then back toward light, their movements slow and unmarked. Someone leans against a wall that still holds the coolness of the night within it. Another rests near a sunlit stone, letting warmth spread through their back. No one remains in one place for long unless it feels right. The monument gathers the afternoon light, its shadow lengthening gradually across the ground. The crack along its face darkens slightly as moisture collects there again, feeding the moss that clings without hurry. A hand brushes the stone in passing, feeling its texture without stopping. Toward evening, the air begins to soften, warmth easing out of the day and settling lower. Fires are prepared again where they always are, wood arranged in familiar patterns, stones adjusted just enough to guide the flame. When the fire catches, it does so calmly, finding its shape without help. Mist rises slowly from the ground, drawn upward as the air cools, curling around stones and roots, drifting into open chambers and along worn paths. Firelight diffuses through it, softening edges, blending forms until the ruins feel less defined, more like a quiet gathering of shapes than separate structures. The monument stands within the haze, its outlines steady even as details fade. Moisture beads along its surface, gathering and slipping downward, darkening the ground at its base. No one watches this happen. It continues whether seen or not. Night deepens without weight. Stars appear between branches and broken walls, their light distant and calm. Fires settle into embers again, their warmth lingering low and steady. Breathing slows. Movements become fewer. Water continues to move beyond the ruins. Leaves whisper softly where they meet. Stone remains where it is. Human presence rests lightly among it all, part of the same gentle rhythm. And as the hours pass without being counted, the place carries on as it always has, moment easing into moment, mist rising and thinning, light fading and returning, the monument standing at the center, unchanged, unremarked, holding the quiet continuity of this world as it continues without pause. The embers hold their low glow through the night, neither brightening nor fading completely, a steady warmth that settles into the stones beneath them. Ash shifts slightly when the air moves, then rests again, light as dust, familiar in its patterns. The ruins feel close in the darkness, not enclosing, simply present, their shapes softened by shadow and mist. Somewhere among the resting forms, a hand moves, fingers curling and uncurling before stillness returns. Breath moves slowly in and out, matching the quiet rhythm of the place. Firelight touches a wall and withdraws, touches a face and slips away again, leaving no trace behind. Above, clouds drift across the open sky, passing over stars and letting them reappear without pattern. The trees that have grown through broken ceilings sway gently, their branches tracing slow arcs against the night. Leaves brush one another, then fall silent, settling back into the air's calm. The monument remains steady at the center, its presence shaping the space around it without effort. Moisture gathers again along the familiar crack, feeding the moss that clings there patiently. The stone holds the day's last warmth and releases it gradually, offering it back to the night without change. Beyond the ruins, the land rests in deeper darkness. Grasses bend slightly under the cool air, then straighten again. Small creatures pass through and are gone, leaving the ground unchanged, their paths remembered only for a moment. The sound of water continues, a constant thread woven through everything else. It moves around stones that have not shifted in countless seasons, its rhythm unaltered by sleep or waking. Those who rest hear it without listening, the sound part of the night itself. When darkness begins to thin once more, it does so gently, as if lifted rather than pushed away. The sky lightens evenly, and the outlines of stone and tree return without sharpness. Mist rises from the ground, drifting through open spaces, wrapping roots and fallen blocks before loosening its hold. The monument emerges again, tall and quiet, its surface catching the faintest light along one edge. The crack along its face remains dark, holding moisture, holding growth. Nothing about it has changed. Someone stirs and sits up, palms resting on the ground, feeling the cool steadiness beneath them. Nearby, embers are coaxed gently, a flame returning without hurry. The fire finds its balance quickly, settling into a low, even burn. Water is carried again from the stream, its surface pale beneath the early light. Droplets fall from the vessel and darken the path briefly before fading. The motion is smooth, practiced, complete when it feels complete. In the fields, dew releases its hold as warmth spreads, leaves lifting slowly, the earth darkening and then lightening again. Feet follow familiar curves through the grass, guided by the land's gentle rise and fall. Back among the ruins, stone warms where light reaches it, remains cool where shade lingers. Cloth is shaken out and laid across smooth surfaces. Tools are lifted and set down. Small adjustments are made where wear has appeared, ending without being marked. Children move quietly through the open spaces, pausing to watch light shift across stone, or to feel the texture of bark where a tree has grown through a wall. Their movements leave no lasting impression, only brief changes in air and sound. The monument gathers more light as the day settles in, its surface revealing subtle variations in color and texture. Someone passes close, their shadow sliding across the stone and then moving on. The shadow fades. The stone remains. The day unfolds gently from this moment, without urgency, without direction. Shade and sunlight trade places. Fires will fade and be lit again. Mist will rise and thin. Water will continue its steady movement. Stone stays where it is. Trees grow a little more. Human presence moves lightly among it all, resting, working, resting again, woven into the same calm pattern that has always been there. And so the place continues, moment easing into moment, light softening and deepening, warmth gathering and releasing, the monument standing at the center, unchanged and unremarked, as the quiet, endless life of this world carries on, gently, steadily, without ever needing to come to an end. The light settles again into a familiar softness, neither strong nor faint, resting easily on stone and leaf and soil. The ruins hold this balance without effort, their surfaces warmed in places, cool in others, each difference accepted as part of the whole. The air moves gently, carrying the quiet scent of moss and damp earth, of fire reduced to embers and water moving steadily beyond sight. Near a fallen arch where vines have taken hold, someone pauses to clear away a small accumulation of leaves, lifting them by hand and setting them aside where they will break down and return to the ground. The motion is slow and careful, ending not when the space is clear, but when it feels open enough. The arch remains as it is, softened and incomplete, framed now by light and shadow rather than walls. The monument stands at the center, receiving the day without response. Light traces its surface in uneven paths, catching briefly on edges before slipping away. The crack along its face gathers moisture again, feeding the quiet growth that clings there. A bird rests near the top for a moment, feathers settling, then lifts away, leaving the stone unchanged. Further out, someone moves along the edge of the fields, hands brushing the tops of plants as they pass, feeling their strength and flexibility. No plants are taken here, only noticed. The path curves gently, shaped by years of walking that have pressed the ground just enough to guide the feet without marking the land. At the stream, water continues its steady movement, reflecting fragments of sky and leaf that break apart and reform endlessly. Someone kneels there, rinsing their hands, letting the coolness settle into skin and bone. When they stand and walk away, the water closes the space behind them without pause. The ruins remain quiet, not empty, but settled. People drift through shaded corridors and open courtyards, their movements slow and unremarked. Someone rests against a wall that still holds the night's cool within it. Another sits near a sunlit stone, letting warmth spread gradually through their back. No one stays long unless it feels right to do so. Children wander in loose patterns, sometimes following one another, sometimes moving alone. They stop to watch an insect navigate the uneven surface of stone, or to listen to the echo of a soft sound in an open chamber. Their attention drifts and returns, guided by curiosity without urgency. As the day leans onward, clouds pass overhead, dimming the light gently before moving on. The change is felt more than seen, a slight easing of warmth, a softening of shadow. Leaves respond with a brief movement, then settle again, their positions altered just enough to feel different when brushed by hand. The monument's shadow lengthens slowly, stretching across the ground without drawing notice. The stone releases heat at its own pace, sharing it with the air nearby. A hand rests against it for a moment in passing, feeling the contrast between sun-warmed surface and shaded coolness, then moves on. Toward evening, the air begins to change, warmth sinking closer to the ground, the scent of moisture returning. Fires are prepared where they always are, wood arranged in familiar patterns, stones adjusted slightly to guide the flame. When the fire catches, it settles quickly, finding its shape without effort. Mist rises again from the earth, thin at first, then gathering, curling around stones and roots, drifting through open halls and along worn paths. Firelight moves through it gently, softening edges, blending forms until the ruins feel less like separate structures and more like a single shared shelter. The monument stands within this softened space, its outline steady even as details fade. Moisture beads along its surface and slips downward, darkening the ground at its base. Moss deepens in color, fed quietly, without change. Night arrives as a deepening rather than a shift. Stars appear between branches and broken walls, distant and calm. Fires settle into embers again, their warmth lingering low and even. Breathing slows, movements grow fewer. Water continues to move beyond the ruins, its sound steady and unbroken. Leaves whisper softly where they meet. Stone remains where it is. Human presence rests lightly among it all, woven into the same quiet rhythm. And the place continues, moment flowing into moment, light fading and returning, mist rising and thinning, warmth gathering and releasing, the monument standing at the center as it always has, unchanged and unremarked, as the slow, gentle life of this world carries on without pause, without direction, without ever needing to become something else. The embers settle further into themselves, their glow dim but steady, a quiet pulse that spreads warmth only as far as it needs to. Ash rests in soft layers, shaped by earlier movements and now left undisturbed. Around the fires, bodies remain still, breathing slow and even, the rise and fall of cloth matching the calm rhythm of the night. The ruins feel closer in the darkness, not pressing in, simply gathered, their outlines softened until stone and shadow blend together. Paths fade into suggestion. Walls become gentle interruptions in the air. The monument remains a deeper shape against the sky, its height sensed more than seen, its presence unchanged. Above, branches sway lightly where trees have grown through open ceilings, leaves brushing one another and then settling again. A leaf loosens its hold and drifts downward, landing without sound on stone already covered in others. No one notices. The ground accepts it. Beyond the reach of firelight, the land rests in deeper quiet. Grasses bend under the cool air and straighten again. Small movements pass through and are gone, leaving no trace that lasts longer than the moment itself. The night holds everything evenly. The sound of water continues, steady and familiar, threading through sleep and waking alike. It moves around stones shaped long ago, its course unaltered by time of day or season. Those who hear it do not listen for it. It is simply there. As darkness thins once more, the change comes gently, almost imperceptibly. The sky lightens without direction, shadows loosening their hold. Mist rises from the ground in pale layers, drifting through open spaces, wrapping roots and fallen blocks before lifting and thinning again. The monument emerges gradually, tall and quiet, its surface catching the faintest hint of light along one edge. Moisture clings to its crack, dark and patient, feeding the moss that spreads there slowly. Nothing about it has shifted. Someone stirs and sits upright, hands resting on the cool ground, feeling its firmness beneath them. Nearby, embers are nudged, a coal responding with a soft glow. The flame returns without effort, settling into a low, even burn that offers warmth without demand. Water is gathered again from the stream, its surface pale and calm beneath the early light. The vessel moves steadily along the familiar path, droplets falling and darkening the soil briefly before disappearing. The motion ends when it feels complete. In the fields, dew loosens its hold as warmth spreads, leaves lifting slowly, the earth darkening and lightening again in quiet response. Feet follow the same gentle curves through the grass, guided by the land's subtle rise and fall. Back among the ruins, stone warms where the light reaches it and remains cool where shade lingers. Cloth is laid out across smooth surfaces. Tools are lifted, used briefly, set down again. Small adjustments are made where wear has appeared, ending without being marked. Children drift through the open spaces, pausing to watch light move across stone or to trace the texture of bark where a tree has grown through a wall. Their attention wanders and returns, leaving only brief changes in sound and air. The monument gathers more light as the day settles in, revealing soft variations in color where stone meets moss, where rain has followed the same paths again and again. Someone passes close, their shadow sliding across its surface before slipping away. The day continues outward from this moment, unfolding without urgency. Shade and sunlight exchange places slowly. Fires will fade and be lit again. Mist will rise and thin. Water will continue its steady movement. Stone stays where it is. Trees grow a little more. Human presence moves lightly among it all, resting, working, resting again, woven into the same calm pattern. And so the place carries on, moment easing into moment, light softening and deepening, warmth gathering and releasing, the monument standing at the center, unchanged and unremarked, as the quiet continuity of this world continues to flow, gently and endlessly, without pause. The morning opens a little wider, light spreading across the ruins until even the deeper recesses hold a faint glow. Stone that has cooled through the night begins to warm again where the sun reaches it, the change slow enough to be felt only when a hand rests there for a while. The air carries a softness, a balance between night's cool and day's warmth, settling comfortably around everything it touches. Along one of the inner paths, someone walks without hurry, feet finding the same worn places between roots and fallen blocks. The path curves gently, guided by the land rather than shaped against it, leading past walls softened by moss and time. A hand brushes a surface in passing, feeling the familiar roughness, then drops again without thought. Near a wide opening where a roof once stood, a few people sit quietly, sharing the warmth of the rising light. One leans back against a stone that still holds the memory of yesterday's sun. Another stretches out on the ground, palms flat against the soil, feeling its steady cool beneath the growing warmth. No one speaks. There is no need to fill the space. The monument stands at the center as it always does, its presence steady and calm. Light reaches higher along its face now, revealing subtle shifts in color where lichen thickens and thins. The crack along its surface remains dark, holding moisture, feeding growth that spreads slowly without direction. A bird circles once above it, then settles elsewhere, leaving the stone unchanged. Beyond the ruins, the fields rest quietly, grasses lifting and bending as the air moves through them. Someone passes along the edge, adjusting a stone where the ground has shifted slightly, pressing it into place with a measured motion. When it holds, the hands withdraw, and the person moves on, the adjustment already blending into everything else. At the stream, water glides past smooth stones, reflecting fragments of sky and leaf that shimmer and dissolve. Someone kneels there, rinsing a vessel, watching the ripples spread and fade. When the vessel is lifted again, droplets fall and darken the earth briefly before disappearing. The stream continues, unmarked. Back among the ruins, small tasks unfold and conclude without signal. Fibers are twisted together and set aside. A chipped edge is smoothed further, not to make it new, only to make it comfortable. A low wall is checked and left as it is, still standing, still enough. Children wander through open spaces, sometimes together, sometimes apart. One pauses to follow the slow movement of a beetle across warm stone. Another traces a line through dust with a finger, watching it blur and vanish with the slightest breath of air. Their attention drifts easily, returning when something nearby catches it again. As the day leans onward, clouds pass overhead, dimming the light gently before moving on. The change is subtle, felt more than seen. Shadows soften and shift, then settle again in new places. The ruins accept this without response, holding whatever light arrives. The monument's shadow lengthens gradually, sliding across the ground at its base. No one marks the movement. The stone releases warmth slowly, sharing it with the air. A hand rests briefly against it, feeling the contrast between sunlit surface and shaded coolness, then moves away. Toward evening, the air begins to settle again, warmth lowering, moisture returning. Fires are prepared in their familiar places, wood arranged with the same quiet care. When the flame appears, it steadies quickly, glowing without flare or urgency, casting soft light across stone and skin. Mist rises once more, thin at first, then gathering, curling around roots and fallen walls, drifting through open halls and along worn paths. Firelight moves through it gently, blurring edges, blending shapes until the ruins feel less like separate forms and more like a single shared presence. The monument stands within the haze, its outlines steady even as details fade. Moisture beads along its surface and slips downward, darkening the ground below. Moss deepens in color, fed quietly, without change. Night arrives as it always does, gradually, without announcement. Stars appear between branches and broken walls, distant and calm. Fires settle into embers again, their warmth lingering low and even. Breathing slows. Movements become fewer. Water continues to move beyond the ruins, its sounds steady and unbroken. Leaves whisper softly where they meet. Stone remains where it is. Human presence rests lightly among it all, woven into the same quiet rhythm. And the place continues, moment easing into moment, light fading and returning, mist rising and thinning, warmth gathering and releasing, the monument standing at the center, unchanged and unremarked, as the slow, gentle life of this world carries on, unending, without pause. The embers hold their place through the night, their glow low and steady, a warmth that settles into stone and earth without reaching outward. Ash rests softly where it has fallen, shaped by earlier movements and now left undisturbed. The ruins feel gathered rather than closed. their forms softened by darkness and mist, edges blurring until stone and shadow become part of the same quiet shape. Above, the open sky drifts slowly, clouds passing across stars and letting them return without pattern. Branches sway where trees have grown through broken ceilings, leaves brushing one another and then resting again. A leaf loosens its hold and drifts downward, landing among others already there, becoming part of the ground without sound. The monument stands as a deeper presence against the sky, its height felt more than seen. The stone releases the last of the day's warmth slowly, evenly, offering it back to the air. Moisture gathers again along the familiar crack, feeding the moss that clings there patiently, deepening in color as the night cools. Beyond the ruins, grasses bend slightly under the night air and straighten again. Small movements pass through the darkness and are gone, leaving no trace that lasts. The land holds these moments lightly, never keeping account. The sound of water continues, constant and calm, threading through everything else. It moves around stones shaped long ago, its rhythm unchanged by darkness or light. Those who rest hear it without listening, the sound woven into breath and sleep. As the darkness thins once more, the change arrives gently, a softening rather than a shift. The sky lightens evenly, shadows loosening their hold. Mist rises from the ground in pale layers, drifting through open spaces, wrapping roots and fallen blocks before lifting and thinning again. The monument emerges gradually, tall and quiet, its surface catching the faintest hint of light along one edge. The crack remains dark, holding moisture, holding growth. Nothing about it has changed, and nothing needs to. Someone stirs and sits, hands resting on the cool ground, feeling its familiar firmness. Nearby, embers are nudged, a coal answering with a faint glow. The fire returns to itself without hurry, settling into a calm flame. Water is carried again from the stream, its surface pale beneath the early light. Droplets fall and darken the soil briefly before fading. Feet follow the same gentle curves along the path, guided by the land's rise and fall. Stone warms where the light reaches it and remains cool where shade lingers. Cloth is laid out. Tools are lifted and set down. Small adjustments are made where wear has appeared, ending without being marked. Children move through the open spaces, pausing to feel bark where a tree has grown through stone, or to watch light shift across the ground. Their attention drifts and returns, leaving only brief changes in air and sound. The day settles quietly into itself. Shade and sunlight trade places slowly. Fires will fade and be lit again. Mist will rise and thin. Water will continue its steady movement. Trees grow a little more. Stone remains where it is. Human presence moves lightly among it all, resting, working, resting again, woven into the same calm pattern. And the place continues as it always has, moment flowing into moment, light softening and deepening, warmth gathering and releasing. The monument standing at the center, unchanged and unremarked, holding the quiet continuity of this world as it goes on, gently, steadily, without ever needing to stop.